Hello everyone and welcome back to another Babbling Irons video, and today we are going to be debating someone who's been on the cusp this season, and his name is Ben Johnson. But what is his best position? Let's get into it. So lads, as you can see by that excellent graphic put up by Mike there, we are looking at Ben Johnson's best position, and I've highlighted three areas for us to kind of focus on today, and that was left back, right back, and right centre back, where we've seen him play over the course of the last 2.5, 3 seasons. So, starting off with, I guess, let's look at the left back position. This is probably how we would see it in a back four if he was to play as a left back, with everyone fully fit. So, yeah, we'd have Johnson left back, and then obviously Aguerd, Zuma, Kufau and Fab in goal. So what do you guys think about Ben Johnson as a left back? Because he's played there before and he's actually looked pretty solid there.
I think he's probably had his standout performance at left back. That Lyon away performance, I think, was by far the one that sticks out the most in people's minds when they think about the best performance he's had. I think you also think about maybe in the Premier League, didn't he play left back against Man City
on his debut? Yeah,
his debut, and he that was a real moment where everyone thought there's a player there, and I think it's very hard to separate his performances because he is so versatile. That left back showing really sticks out in the mind. So for me, I think he's got a ton of potential there and he's got the athleticism, but for some reason, I think the left-hand side, you seem to get so much more delivery from him that is lacking on the right-hand side for some reason. Not that he doesn't perform, but it just seems like his crossing and his overall play goes that little level up.
What do you think, Mike? Because we've seen obviously Ben Johnson play left back, like Sloth's mentioned there, and he's been actually probably his better performances, I would, arguably say. Do you think that's because he is quite both-footed? He can deliver crosses on his left foot, and maybe when he's playing left back, people kind of underestimate him a little bit, especially the opposition, because he's a right-footed left back, and maybe allows him a bit more space and a bit more comfortability on the ball when we do have the ball.
I think ultimately, as we're seeing in football nowadays, if you are, and it's something that we used to see back in the day when you think of players like Zambrotta, for instance, is a right-sided player who played left and right back. And, same game with Philipp Lahm, play either side. And again, I'm not comparing it to those players because they were world-class players. What I'm saying is these were fullbacks before the time we're in now, where it's actually fashionable to have players on the opposite side, who then can come inside. I think what he's found at left back is, one, he's very assured defensively, and I think that's always been a thing. And he tends to do quite well in that position because he's good defensively. And compared to what we've had in the past in that position, I think, again, it stands out how he is there. I do think there's a misconception about him going forward in that he is less effective because statistically, some of the points being raised just aren't backed up, especially when it comes down to his delivery quality and so on, because technically speaking, he has the best delivery out of our fullbacks. But at least last I checked, that may have changed it, but last I checked, he was. And again, I think it's the fact that he can go either side. He can go inside and go outside. I think the advantage is if, as we saw that he did against Villa, if not last season, I think it was the season before, where he cut in from the right-hand side and had a shot of his left and curled it in. Having a player who can do that is of great benefit. Now, I think ultimately a bit of his development has been stunted in the way he's been utilised. But there is, as Sloth said, there's enough in there that we've seen that says that there is a player in there if he's given the chance in which to develop that. But Noble made a point the other day. A player needs to play. It's all very well talking about training and so on, or he's not doing it in the first team, but it's a bit hard to get a rhythm when you're shunted around. So we need to start picking a position. Otherwise, you end up in a player like a John Spector, who is a master of none, but can his hands into everything. But ultimately, is that player then that you're stunting their growth because of their their flexibility, and it's essentially you are hampering their career, really.
I think one of the things that we could do is potentially I'd just let Cresswell go, and you have him as your secondary left back for the season going forward. Because let's face it, Emerson has really lifted that position, and he's shown so much in the last few weeks when it comes to his pace, when it comes to his work rate, but also the quality of his crosses when he is on the ball. His delivery into the box is so much better than what we've seen from Cresswell moving ball. And I think if you let Ben Johnson go in as his secondary player, you know, Emerson's 28 now, 29 soon, and that's not by any ways aging him out, but you have that option to rotate a player in, to give him those minutes that he needs, and say to him as well, look, we're going to be playing 5 at the back, so you're going to get a chance to have a lot of games. We're going to be mixing up the systems in depending on the opposition we play, but also going forward, you have the option to go either side, but you need to stake the claim. And I think that's one of the things that could really be key for us. We've spoken a lot about how the left back spot is a real weakness for us. But if we have these players who can cover and perform when they've covered, let's not pretend like he's not played left back, or give him the credit that I think he deserves with a chance there. But it kind of alleviates that need, and it would allow us to get someone who can play left back, left centre back in.
What do you guys think? You know, let's compare that left back position to him playing, say, the standard right back as you'd see here. So, you know, pretty much the same back four, except Emerson on the left. So, what I think with Johnson is, I've always said he's a better left back than a right back, just simply because he's better defensively. I know maybe statistically in terms of crosses, he's better, but with the ball, he's not really someone that's great at overlapping, I would say. Like, I'd much prefer him playing left back, where I guess there's less emphasis to do that, because if you're playing right back, you're going to have to overlap. If you've got Bowen right wing, you're going to have to keep making those runs, as Kufal does for us, and he's been doing pretty well recently. So I've always thought Ben Johnson looks a lot more comfortable playing left back, because there's less emphasis on him to actually make those overlapping runs and, you know, be that attacking threat that we necessarily need, just because, you know, you're more likely to have someone like Benrahma in front of him who is more technically gifted than, say, Jarrod Bowen. So what do you guys think? Out of the left back and the right back spot, where do you think his best position is in that sense?
I think when you look at the grand scheme of things in terms of route to the team, he's arguably his easiest route is through the right back position. Obviously, Cresswell, as Sloth said, I would let go personally as well. But if we're going to go with a 5, he's not getting in over Emerson. So again, he's not going to get in. If then we look at the right side, Coufal's, whilst he's got better and been much better recently, still his future is up in the air. We do have a 2-year extension, but again, technically speaking, his contract is up in the summer. So technically speaking, we have 2 fullbacks going.
Yeah.
One side he's not going to start because of who we have currently playing at left wing back, who can play left back. I think people are starting to trust him a bit more defensively, so a back 4 might be seen as an option. So you then kind of go, well, right back probably is the position to develop him in and give him more of a go. I think the reason why he does better on the left side is because there's a better link play, or there's a better link player on that side in Benrahma than Bowen. We know Bowen can be quite selfish. He kind of comes inside. He actually drifts out of the game. When you look at the number of passes, say, Bowen makes in a game compared to, say, Benrahma, it's night and day. Bowen's normally around about 15 to 20 passes, give or take, in a match. Benrahma, you're looking about 30, maybe up to 40 passes in a game. So you have a player that you can link with a lot more, whereas a player who actually wants to be less involved in build-up. So it's actually a bit more difficult on that right-hand side. So unless you are very forward-minded, which obviously Coufal is, it's a bit of a harder system to adapt into. So it's probably why he has looked better on that left-hand side, because it's a much better linkage. Also, Rice is on that side. Let's not forget, you know, you also got Rice there. On the other side, you've got Bowen, who fades in and out of games because of how he plays, and then you have Souček. So it's a bit harder as a player to be more offensively minded or to be able to link play and be involved unless you're a player happy to just stand out on the side and get it hit towards you and then try and run down the wing. Now, he has done that in the past, but he does it a lot less when he does play. So
yeah,
I think it's a tricky side for us because we have certain deficiencies and styles that make it a bit more difficult to be a better player than, say, if you're playing on the left-hand side.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of, what you mentioned with styles there's actually a system we're using at the moment, which is that back three. And it looks like he's probably going to be playing as a right centre-back. So, when we do have our strongest lineup and he was in it, it would be something like this, where he would play on that right centre-back role. So another kind of debate is maybe he's better towards adapting towards that centre-back role in terms of a back three. What do you guys think of that? Because I always just when I think of Ben Johnson, I think defensively sound, defensively very solid, but attacking wise, not great. With the ball, not great. Would that perhaps suit someone like Ben Johnson playing right centre back more than, say, left back or right back, where he doesn't necessarily have that requirement to go forwards as much? And you see like the likes of Thilo Kehrer, whose best two performances, although he came off against Newcastle a couple of weeks ago at half time, have been in a back three in that right centre back role where he's not getting exposed or found out for those weaknesses in his game.
I think that can be part of it. But I think we just spoke about the kind of players who help cover them in midfield. And I think it's really important to emphasize that when you have a player like Declan Rice in comparison to Souček, the amount of help and support you're going to get is so different. It's gulfs in comparison. And while I do think Johnson has a lot of ability, I think the physical edge toward centre-back is just where I'd kind of be a little bit hesitant long-term. And that's not to say there haven't been great centre-backs who aren't under 6 foot or, we just spoke about a very famous example of a player who, wasn't the tallest. The Italian centre-backs famously aren't always massive units. But I think knowing Moyes, he would want a big physical unit there. So I would kind of question the likelihood of him playing right centre-back for a long term. I think this again comes down to where his versatility could be argued to be a bit of a hindrance for him. He's a great option to have as cover there, but I don't think he's ever going to be a world beater in that position. And I've said it time and time again, if you want to climb up and progress, you have to have players who you think can be of that level. Can you push you forward toward the top end of the table? And I just don't think he would be that for a centre-back. Now, it's not saying he doesn't possess the qualities to excel, but it's just, I think there are a couple of very fine points that he just doesn't quite have for a centre-back.
Mike, what do you think about that? Because, it's quite rare to see, someone like Ben Johnson playing right centre-back just because of the nature of where he's been before. But we've mentioned his versatility and, they're playing left-back after, probably wanting to establish himself as a right-back. He found out maybe that he's maybe stronger playing left-back sometimes. So could this be a new role that he could adapt to and get stronger at?
See, I personally think that we need to move away from that. I know there people will point to, well, look what's happened with the likes of, say, Cresswell. I think it's a move you do to essentially add longevity to your career. I think when you're coming to the end of your career, you do it. We saw the same happen way back when with Julian Dix, when his knees were going and he was in trouble. Didn't play left back anymore, started to move centre back as part of a free. There's other examples throughout the years, but it's obviously one that, again, Dix being one of the favourites, it's a really good example. But it's that, for me, you don't move from fullback into centre-back unless you're looking to add longevity to your career. You maybe go from a fullback playing right back or wing back at times. That's because there's not space in your position and you need time and you're a good enough player. I think that's what we've seen in the case with Thilo before, that he's not been necessarily at the level needed at PSG as a centre-back and they had a whole wealth of depth that you can play right back because we don't necessarily have quality there, and you are better than our other options. Maybe not going forward, but overall your quality is better. So I don't see it as a progression, really. I don't think, again, to Sloth's point, he's not, I think he's like 6'1", something like that. It's not the tallest centre back. Yes, it adds mobility. Yes, it adds a bit more pace to it. And he is very good from a defensive standpoint. But I feel for him, it would be a backward place. I do think that under the right management and the right kind of tutelage, he could become much more proficient going forward, because, as I've said, his delivery is better than I think the credit he gets. If he is encouraged to adapt and to go forward more, then we could see it. We've also got to remember he's only 22. He's still got plenty of time to develop. So given the right encouragement and the right level of tutelage, we really could see a decent right back there. We just got to look at how quickly Rice, over a span of 1 to 2 years, develops. He's obviously not his quality, but when you hear things about Ben Johnson, his attitude sounds spot on.
Yeah.
So I think if he had someone come in, take him under the wing and made him feel like he was a special player or a player that can really develop, I think he would give everything for that type of management, that type of coach who takes the time to say, look, this is what I need you to do. I want you to be in the first team. I can't use you right now. And this is why I can't use you. Go and work on it. Go and develop it. I think that's what happens. And I don't feel that's what we have at the moment in our current structure.
I do think, and I was kind of humming and ahhing whether to bring this point up. I do think a large part of my issue with Ben Johnson in terms of just questioning does he have the ability is purely the fact that we haven't always seen him, and that's not his fault. I do think that he's been played when others have been underperforming, and he's not been played when others have been underperforming.
Yeah.
That's not your fault. You can go on the training ground and give 100% and put in 10 out of 10 performances. But if you don't get picked at the weekend, it's irrelevant. And even to the point where he was coming through and a player who was getting picked over him was Ryan Fredericks, who is possibly one of the worst right backs we've had in recent times. He's just an awful footballer, but ran really fast. So I do think a lot of the issue with this for him, from what I've heard about him, will be, am I going to get the minutes that I need? And he'll be looking at the manager and thinking, do I really want to stay and potentially miss out on time to develop because of that?
Well, yeah, there is going to be a lot of question marks because, we don't know who the manager is going to be next year. Could be Moyes, couldn't be. So it'd be interesting to see if a new manager does come in, where he plays him, if he does stay. But yeah, I guess we're going to find out. But what do you guys think? Let us know in the comments what you think Ben Johnson's best position is. Looks like we're going to see him playing right centre-back or left centre-back coming up, just because of Agaird's injury, and it may be a bit longer than some of us hoped. But we're going to find out more about that this week. But yeah, let us know in the comments what you think about Ben Johnson and, yeah, what his best position is.